I want to switch gears, and we're going to go into the main topic today, which is we're in baby week. I had my baby, guys, and I'm sorry that I didn't put videos out.
Well, you didn't have your baby. You were with your wife as she had her baby.
But the baby is here.
Yes.
And,
the baby was had.
So beautiful. I will put an image up. All right, welcome to Position Recovery Podcast. My name is Jeremy Grogan. I'm your host. I'm also a child of God and an overcomer of alcohol, tobacco, and just about everything that you could overcome has been a part of my life. And you guys will notice that I took a couple of weeks off. It's because I had a baby. And so we thought we'll just call this Baby Week. And so everything we're going to talk about today is going to be in light of life and birth and what it's like, at least for me, having a baby or a child in recovery where I'm walking out my fullness, and it's a completely different experience. So today we have Zach is with us, and Jeremy Grammon will give intros in just a moment. But if you're new and this is your first time, please go ahead and subscribe, like the video, and share it, because we're going to be more of I think Zach coined the phrase, this is going to be a grassroots movement. There's just not a lot of recovery content in this sort of space or this setting. And so what we're doing is relatively new, doing recovery podcasts. There are a lot of people out there that have psychology degrees and they're doctors and they have their little piece. But as far as like personalities and hanging out and talking about recovery, we're about it, that I would say, except for that weed guy. Remember him from the other week?
Yeah,
I was like smoking pot, and he's like addiction recovery channel.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, I'll go ahead and turn it over for introductions.
So as Jeremy already said, I'm Zach, and I'm the regular other host on the show. But I'm an overcomer of pornography, self-hatred, religion, time stealers, you name it, all the stuff that kind of just drags along with life after that. But yeah, and I'm an associate pastor here at Faith Foundry Church, and having a heck of a fun time. I'm going to kick it over to our guest, Jeremy.
I am Jeremy Grammon. I'm the senior pastor of Faith Foundry Church. And as a pastor, what's typical is that we don't overcome anything because we're perfect. And that's a total lie. And why we really, truly believe here at Faith Foundry that recovery church is really real church. Because it's about being real with one another. So I have overcome many things. Some of the bigger ones were I battled a sexual addiction early on in my life, stemming from child molestation. And then more recently, I've been an overcomer for probably the last 6-7 years of really being a person who runs away from difficult situations. And I didn't know that I needed to be in recovery over that until I understood how it is rooted in messages of lack and seeking comfort and things like that. So this has been an awesome journey for me into the place of wholeness and freedom through recognizing that all of my coping behaviors and mechanisms were cover-ups for things. So
totally. So you know what? I just thought of this. We are going to have what's the term we used to use? Sexual integrity. Is that the term we started using? Yeah. We're going to do a whole
segment
podcast on that, and we'll have you back for that.
That's huge. Yeah,
because
so rad.
That'll be somewhat controversial, because I know that a lot of people in the recovery community, at least for me, when I got sober and I came right into Christianity and received all that, that was not even something that I thought about as being a problem. It was just like part of my life, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of people are that way. So they're like, oh, I quit heroin, I'm not on alcohol, and they don't even think about, like, just in their own defense, it's not something that they think about, like, oh wait, I got to stop that. But you know, it's a journey. So that's why this stuff will start to work itself out. We have a really fun show today. So we're going to start with step 3. And like I said earlier, we're going to do position recovery as a brand. We're going to operate with 12 steps, 12 principles throughout the whole year. So being in step 3 it comes with, so the principle underlying or underscoring step 3 is surrender, which is pretty cool that we're talking about that along with Baby Week, because I think that we can be able to put those together. So I'll go ahead and read the Celebrate Recovery version. I've got I love the Celebrate Recovery material here. This is book 2. But let's go ahead and read this. We made a decision to turn our lives and our wills over to the care of God. Now, we're coming out of step 1 and 2. Step 1, we admitted we were powerless. Step 2, we came to believe that there's a higher power. And now this is this place where we actually make a decision to turn this thing over.
Yeah.
And
powerful.
Yeah, Jeremy, you're our guest. What do you got to say about that?
Yeah, this is probably the biggest thing. A lot of people think that step 4 is the breakthrough. I really truly believe that step 3 is the breakthrough, because it's the point where we are willing to say yes to God. We're willing to yield to His work in our life. We're willing to let go of control. That's typically control is always at a root of our coping mechanisms and destructive behaviors, because when we have control, there's that sense that we're safe or that we're getting our needs met. And so this step 3 is actually massively huge, because it opens up the door for the actual activation of the power to come and change your life.
Well, what I've noticed is, so as I go through these and I reflect, I've got I don't have, 2 years of clean time on here, but I've been doing recovery for 10 years. And when I initially did step 3, it's like this weight comes off, because you're just like, oh, I surrender. Now there's another weight that will come off when you confess and you make amends and stuff. But there's like this initial, I don't have to hold all this anymore. Now what you do with that is, because sometimes we start picking that stuff back up. Like that's kind of my journey, is like, I let it all go in theory. And then along the journey, I pick it back up. What do you think about that, Zach, about picking stuff back up? Like, have you worked with people or talked
all the time
about yourself even?
Yeah. Picking stuff back up after surrendering it is what I've seen. It's like almost a natural process. There's a level of, I think everyone's dealt with, I've surrendered everything. And then you realize, oh man, I didn't realize, down the road a little bit, I picked this back up, or maybe I didn't surrender at all. Maybe I didn't realize all I needed to surrender, because there's so much that gets revealed later down the road, years, weeks, you name it. It's like the onion, the onion gets peeled back. There's things that we realize, I didn't realize I need to surrender. Just like what we were saying earlier about like pornography and stuff. Oh man, some people are like, I didn't realize that was an issue. I didn't realize I needed to surrender that. Little things here and there, but yeah.
Yeah, I will for sure say so. The longest clean time I have was with alcohol, so that's 2 years, and then tobacco, I'm coming up on a year.
Come on, dude.
I wasn't even planning for that one. Like, that was just something that I prayed, dude, all the time. All the time. Jeremy even knows it. I was like, for at least 6 years that I can remember, I didn't want to use tobacco, but I felt like I had to. I could not get peace. And eventually, Jeremy even remembers when I was like, Paul says crucify the flesh, so I'm going to crucify. And I only crucified the flesh for like 3 days before I was like, no, okay, I'm done crucifying the flesh. But, and then pornography is still kind of that thing that I struggle with. I've got a couple months now or something like that. But I'm not to where I can say I have absolute total freedom. Like, I can say right now, alcohol is not something that I go back to. Tobacco is certainly, like, I would feel so bad. Dude, if I literally was going in to get chew, I'd probably puke. Just from the guilt, not from the chew, but from the guilt of, and for the law, like having a year from tobacco is like super powerful.
Yeah.
So I don't know to relate this to surrender. There has to be something. Actually, because Jeremy's my pastor, I want to give you a moment to say, because I'm going to answer and say, I don't know how I have this freedom from tobacco. I just don't, because I don't feel like I did anything differently than I ever did. But something broke through and something changed. What do you think about my situation?
So it actually fits with step 3. There's areas of our lives, and like Zach was saying, because this really fits with the whole subject, is that it is layers. It's peeling off and going into the deeper things that the Holy Spirit. So if you want to talk about step 3 from a spiritual aspect, this is when we turn our life and will over to the care of God. But we've got all this baggage. We've got all this life that we've lived outside of yieldedness to God. And so this is the work of the Holy Spirit. Part of the reason why God puts His Spirit in us is to begin to shape us and mold us and draw out who we really are as sons and daughters of God. And that's a shaping and a molding. We're designed to look like Christ. So in your journey, Jeremy, there was many times where there were moments that you decided to yield, that you were like, this is not who I am anymore. It's not a part of my life anymore. Tobacco was one of those things that intellectually you were like, yeah, I shouldn't be doing this. And you would get convicted by reading scriptures like, Paul saying, crucify the flesh. But there was still in your heart, there was not the yieldedness to the Spirit to actually do the work. Because actually, apart from the work of the Spirit, we can't overcome the flesh. The flesh cannot overcome the flesh. It has to be done by the Spirit. And a lot of people, think that they are going to will themselves into freedom and will themselves. And that's honestly, that's in the recovery community a lot, that, I'm willing myself, I'm doing this, I have the power to overcome it. Well, you actually don't. That's why in AA, they say you have to be willing to grasp hold of a power greater than yourself, because you and I don't have the power. I, as a pastor living in God and the relationship that I have with God, I was not able to overcome anything of my negative behaviors outside of the place of yieldedness and just coming to God and saying, you know what? Who am I? Who are you and who am I? And what do you want me to know about where I'm at in life right now?
That's awesome. Zach, surrender. What do you surrender?
What do I surrender?
What have you been surrendering?
What have I been surrendering? I've been surrendering a lot. I love what Jeremy was talking about it has to be a Spirit's work, because God's having me reflect back on, because we've all gone through here at our church specifically a big season of growth, and it's actually right around the time you got off tobacco.
Yeah.
And it was
that is true, isn't it?
Yeah. And so I've had this huge growth season spiritually, and I've noticed a lot of freedom, but the enemy's been trying to come back in my life and try to attack me. And so now I'm going back to the tools we've learned about. It's all about the Spirit, just like what Jeremy was saying. It's all about the Spirit's power to do it. And a big pattern of mine is to will things. And so it's like, man, I'm not reading enough. I'm not doing enough. The whole doing, right? And so I'm having the Holy Spirit just breathe on me, a way of just being. And there's a song I listen to by Jason Upton. I forget the name of it, but there's a part he goes, when I'm scared about the future and when I'm restless in the present, I surrender it all to you and just basically just sit and be. And that to me is the hardest thing, because God's addressing to me one of the biggest fears I've had my whole life is nothing happening.
Yeah.
And so I just have to be okay with knowing that something is happening, and it's happening just like what Paul says, we have to live with eyes, I think it's Paul, not seeing the natural, but seeing the spiritual, basically, and not just judging things about our physical world. And that's the same thing with recovery. We can't just judge our recovery by the physical either, because there's so many people that have a lot of clean time, but that you can tell they're not like sober minded.
Yeah. There's actually a key scripture, if I can share it, that really helps people connect to what the step 3 is. And that's Philippians 2. And I believe it's verse 13 that says, it's actually God who is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases him, or to overcome, to live the life that he created us to live. So it's actually not it's not our power. It's not even our desire. Our desire in the flesh is to feed the flesh. But the desire of the Spirit is when we yield to the Spirit. The Spirit comes and gives us the desire and the power. So and that's like what he's doing in your life.
The key is the yieldedness.
That's, it is.
Yes.
So
and that's
all about
because it. I think we talked last week or a couple weeks ago, Zach, I said, I remember Haley was, I've not on the journey with Haley, but I've seen her around about the same time, but she has so much more sobriety than I do, right? And I just have always thought about her, like, what was it? Why does she have like 7 years and I have 2? And so I'm not trying to make a comparison in any other reason than to say, was there anything that I could have done? And the answer would be yes, I could have yielded more, because it seems to me like she yielded.
Yeah, she was willing to literally die to get this. It was,
that's what, there's a key part here, and a lot of people, especially in the recovery community, and this is talked about a lot in Celebrate Recovery, they use God as an acrostic, like the gift of desperation. And what we have to understand is that we're only going to yield to the point where we get relief. So it's only when the pain gets bigger than the fear that we're actually willing. I'm getting all scientific on you, but basically from a mindset, it's only when the pain gets bigger than the fear that you'll actually be willing to change. So honestly, Grogan, you really hadn't experienced a rock bottom, the level that Haley had experienced a rock bottom.
Sure, I can.
And so the pain for
that.
her had gotten so much greater than the fear. And when I'm talking about fear, I'm talking about, in your case, like the fear of not having tobacco. I mean, you would call me 3 days in or say, hey man, and you're sweating and you're like, dude, this is so hard. I can't do this. And I would say, well, that's right. You can't do this. It's got to be a work of the Spirit. But until the pain gets bigger. So at some point, almost a year ago, the pain of chewing tobacco, whether that was the financial burden or just the aspect of this doesn't belong in my life, got bigger than the fear of what it would feel like to come off of tobacco.
To be honest, one of the things that started around the same time as when I started the channel, and I had this like awareness. The Lord's like, you're going to be representing my kingdom on a platform that I'm building for you. And it was like, and you're going to chew tobacco. So that was around the same time. But I don't know how much I want to attribute the freedom, because I still had to yield, and it still hurt really bad for probably about a week. But something shifted, and it really wasn't as bad as it was before. But when I say it feels like I didn't do anything different, it just feels like I didn't do anything different. Like I just tried it. This is like the 65th time to quit, and the pain sucks 3 days in. I'm just not going to do it. And I did that before, but it got worse. But this time it didn't get worse.
You're in a new relationship with Holy Spirit, though.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing, is that you're in a completely different relationship with Holy Spirit. And that's the point of breakthrough. And that's what step 3 is. Yeah. You're starting a relationship with Holy Spirit, who is God inside of you. He is the life giver, the power source, the power, that same power that raised Christ from the dead, living inside of you. And so step 3 is a step that we actually go through all through our life, because we're always going to come to another place of faith and surrender. Yeah. We're always going to come to that proverbial onion, that another layer where God says, oh, what about this? Let's step into this and see what fruit comes from it.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is exciting. I want to switch gears, and we're going to go into the main topic today, which is we're in baby week. I had my baby, guys, and I'm sorry that I didn't put videos out.
Well, you didn't have your baby. You were with your wife as she had her baby.
But the baby is here.
Yes.
And,
the baby was had.
So beautiful. I will put an image up. So in post-production, I'll show all you guys the picture of the baby. But this has been such a different experience, guys. So I'm there. This is the third baby that I got to help deliver. So I had a midwife with my first wife, with Allie. And midwives are generally like really hands-on, and they want the dad to be a part of it. Doctors, some of them are like, this is my job, I want to deliver. So with Peyton, I didn't get to be a part of that. I got to be in the room, but I didn't get to. The doctor was like not going to let me deliver. But with Melody, I got to catch, and with Olivia, I got to catch. So Olivia Faith Rose Grogan is her name. I'm bringing that up in light of this, because in no other time in having these births have I thought so much, and my heart grieved so much for abortions, and not just abortions, but even kids that are abandoned. They're born and then they're abandoned. And so my heart is like super sensitive right now for other children, because I am holding a baby, and the fact that there's even an option to like say, do you want the baby or not, is almost makes me want to puke. It's like, who could possibly say no to like 2 eyeballs and 5 fingers on the hands and some feet, and the baby looks just like a Grogan, dude. The forehead, we have like the signature Grogan forehead, and
she's bald.
She has it, and she's bald too. So, but I just, I don't know, man. I've never been hit like this before, and so I'm still walking out some of this sensitivity. Anyway, we're in baby week. I just want to open up to you guys to see what your thoughts are about. Maybe we'll talk about the recovery community and babies. And Jeremy, you're a pastor, so you work with people that are probably in recovery, that are making these kinds of decisions. Is there anything that you want to speak to the audience about, just in light of this?
Yeah, it's a really difficult thing, because you have the parents that many times they don't want to give up their baby, but they're either going to try and force themselves, again with the will, to try and be the parent that they haven't been able to be before, or they're having to make a sacrifice and say, you know what, I'm not in a state that I am able to keep this child safe or care for this child. And so they make that heartbreaking decision to either put the child up for adoption or the child gets taken away because of, CPS or things like that.
Totally.
And so but we're living in times where this is kind of like, by and large, a normal process. And so we're living in that disconnected, dysfunctional aspect of what addiction does, what pain does, it's not just addiction. I mean, we're living in the ramifications of, even just a fatherless generation, of just the disconnectedness of things, which, results in like attachment disorder. And a huge part of my life and ministry has been working with kids that have either gone through adoptions that are on the brink of failing, or in the foster care system, or have been completely abandoned or orphaned by their biological parents. And so I spent 14 years working with kids in that realm. And so seeing the negative effects of that obviously breaks our hearts. But I want to bring some hope into that, because as much as we look at society and there's a place that we just see the brokenness, and our hearts go out to the kids, and my heart goes out to the parents too. It's been a long time since I was a dad who was holding a baby. My kids are all grown up. In fact, my youngest just celebrated her 17th birthday. But I've had kids long enough that I do have the dad bod, which I wore my dad bod hat on purpose, knowing that we were going to be talking about this today. But back to what we were saying, in the realm, especially in the realm of addiction, a lot of people don't understand what's going on in the mind of a parent, where they actually choose addiction over their child.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the biggest things that is misconstrued in society. Like, how dare they, and we look down on these people, but we have to understand that person is in a level of pain that's so great that they don't even have the capacity to choose to be a parent, to get themselves cleaned up, to do what is needed to do to care for this child. And a lot of people think, well, they should just turn things around. Well, that's a good thought to have, but if you haven't walked through step 3, if you're not yielded to the place where you've given your power over to God, you're going to try and do it in your own strength, and you can't do it.
Yeah.
And so you're just going to live, and this is, I'm not trying to put anybody down. The reality of it is that as a society, we are living in response to everything that is uncomfortable and painful in our life. And we're just seeking. The point of addiction is we're seeking to feel good. We're seeking to feel some aspect of love. If I can't get love from somebody else, I'm going to love myself. And at the root of every person, we have to be loved and valued. And that's that way for children. So I'm really appreciative of the movement. There's a massive adoption movement that's happening right now, where people are understanding that if we're going to change things in society, we've got to be fathers and mothers. And so there's those that are either have raised their kids and now they're being willing to foster or adopt. There's huge aspects of our family, especially on my wife's side, that have taken in and adopted and bringing kids, giving homes to kids that would not otherwise have a home. So there are things happening that are good, that are there to take care of the problem that we're facing.
Yeah.
So
in my experience, I look at here's the way that I look at it. Even theologically, I just look at it as when God restores a person, and he restored me, I am now like a disarmed weapon, meaning I was a weapon for the kingdom of darkness, and I was walking out the enemy's kingdom, and then I got disarmed of that and brought into a new kingdom, and now I'm territory that has been taken, right? And now I walk that out, and my children become the fruit of that. And so I guess just for my own, it's not really a battle. It's just that I grieve, man. I grieve for other people that aren't experiencing this. I grieve for the people that are in their addiction that have lost their children. I grieve for people that have been separated from their kids. And I grieve for the kids that didn't even have a chance. And that's just and that's coming from this new space. In my atheist life, I would have been pro-choice. I would have personally still had this conviction that it's wrong to kill a baby, but I didn't necessarily think of it as murder. But I just knew that I was never going to have to deal with that because it was not a decision I was going to make. But now I think differently about it, and I see the baby as a life, right? As a person that was created for a purpose, and to see that just totally discarded, just grieves my soul.
I want to tag on that really quick. I'll be really short. So here's the hope. Here's the good news. Because we look at that and we think, oh, well, the cycle's just repeating itself.
Yeah.
But all it takes is one generation.
Yeah.
It just takes one person saying yes. If one person, so Jeremy, even though your mom and dad made choices and are walking with the Lord and are planted some seeds for you, there was another level of a choice that you had to make for your generational line. But it's your yes. It's you walking out step 3 that opened up the door. It's not that your kids just get to live in the fruit of your yes. They actually have become kingdom people themselves, and they're now empowered to actually carry it farther than you.
Gotcha.
Because of the authority that comes behind your yes.
The glory of the latter house is greater than the glory of the former house.
And so this is what we are as parents. If you're a parent and you're recognizing you were either born into a generational cycle of addiction or criminality or some form of abuse, or maybe you were born abandoned, maybe you were born into this place. Maybe you were a failed abortion. We've heard lots of incredible testimonies of that. And you have an opportunity. This is the goodness of God. God gives every person an opportunity to start that new generational line, to break strongholds so that we're not perpetuating what's happening in the earth right now.
I'm going to give Zach the last 2.5 minutes. What do you got? You look like you're over there getting ready.
I'm a pastor.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I know.
We eat up all the time.
I know. I feel like Jeremy covered so much of that topic. Most of what I know about childbirth and stuff is from my own experiences. And I got married and had children really young. I mean, my youngest is now 6 months old, and my oldest is 2. And so I know that I feel the same. Especially after becoming a dad, like, I can't watch movies anymore that have children being harmed in them, because I'm like just destroyed over that. Because I can relate and be like, oh my gosh, I have a kid. I can't imagine what would happen if this happened. And so one thing I do know I want to say is that, like, that feeling, that like grieving feeling of like, oh man, my heart just goes out towards all these orphan kids or people that have adoptions and stuff. It's like, that's a huge reason why we kind of do what we do, because I'm like, well, I want to help. I'm in a place where I'm like, I can help people make the right decisions, at least help, in any way we can. Having God use me in any area I can. I want to have an influence in that area to help steward up the next generation to make that right choice, And so that's the one thing I wanted to say, is that we get to help steward other people into making that right choice. And what we do now, every right decision we do now has huge effects later down the road generationally. So
we're just reverse the curse, man.
Come on,
that's what you guys used to
that's
say.
That's got to be a t-shirt. Reverse the curse.
But I mean,
we still say it.
Now we talk mostly about sonship, and but sounds like a good time for a break, guys. We really could go forever on this stuff, man. But we'll catch you guys on the other side of the break. Thank you for listening to the Position Recovery Podcast. You can watch us on YouTube. Just search YouTube for Position Recovery. If you find our content meaningful, we encourage you to become a member. Head on over to patreon.com/position, where there are a variety of membership levels and one that is perfect for your budget. If you want to connect with us and others in the Position Recovery community, you can join our Discord or visit our Facebook page. I pray that our content blesses you in a meaningful way, and it's always awesome hanging out with you guys. We look forward to connecting with you on Patreon and other social platforms we are on. Welcome back. We are talking about Baby Week, and I have some news. This is kind of a difficult segment to always, like, because there has to be news available, and I have to be able to get it. It has to be on topic. So I found one. So I'm going to read the article headline. I'm going to read the headline and then probably like the first couple of sentences, and then we'll just have a conversation about this. It says, Arkansas toddler saved by Narcan after swallowing pill left out. What do you guys think about that? An overdose victim was a baby. I don't know anything about Narcan. Do you know anything about Narcan?
I don't.
Narcan is like some kind of like
What officers use that for is when someone's having an overdose, it clears their like bloodstream. It makes it to where they're not. Man, I watched a lot of Live PD and they used it on like every episode.
Oh, did they?
That were so when people are having an OD on the like the street, for example, they'll just come up and bam, Narcan, and they're like calmed down and back to.
Is it like a shot?
It is.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's kind of like an epinephrine pen.
Oh,
but
yeah,
it's
like an
gotcha.
Narcan.
Yeah, okay.
It goes on to say, it says the 2-year-old is Arkansas's youngest person saved after swallowing a pill left out by the mother. I knew on an adult it would have no negative effect, said Luna, an officer with 5 years experience on the Texarkana force in the city. He says the last thing I wanted to do was make the situation worse. So he's like not even sure that this thing was going to work. But, I just thought it was an interesting article. I guess we could really go in the direction, not necessarily about the officer and what Narcan is, but the fact that a parent left a pill out where a child could...
A type of pill that would cause
I was going to
OD.
say, what kind of pill was it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Obviously, it wasn't
Yeah, they-
ibuprofen.
But let's just assume that it's the worst, right?
Okay.
And so, what do you guys think about? So when I think about that, there's probably a mother behind this that is going to live with a bunch of guilt. So actually, the situation could have been different, right? She could have had a lot more guilt if the officer wasn't able to respond, didn't do the Narcan, and the baby died, right? What do you guys think about a parent, somebody who's so in addiction? Our minds are cluttered and full of stuff, right? It's not that we don't love our kids, because this, I'm thinking back to when I was an addict or alcoholic in my addiction before I was a Christian 15 years ago. That could have just as easily been me, right? I could have just left some stuff out, luckily this wasn't meth or anything, but just thinking about we're just kind of oblivious to other people around us, and we're in our own world, and then we leave out some drugs and our kids take it and die. Like, that's got to add a whole nother level of layer of guilt to somebody who's already, living an addictive lifestyle, already trying to cover up pain with drugs, to just have something like that happen. What would you, Jeremy, as a pastor, how would you pastor somebody who had a situation like that? And
Well,
I'm
first
putting you
of
on the
all,
spot.
yeah,
because
no.
this is good for people to hear this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So actually, we have to put this in context of like just normal life and the life that we live in, because kids getting into things and pilling out. Now, we don't know how the pill was left out. We don't know, but like there's kids every day that have to get their stomachs pumped because they drink toilet cleaner. I mean, there's things that happen. And
Absolutely.
so we have to understand that we have to put this in context. We can't just automatically jump on the bandwagon to start ridiculing this mother.
Yeah.
We have to understand that kids are curious. They get into things. As protective as we are, and as we want to put all the locks on the drawers and do all of the I was the dad that put the little plastic covers on all the outlets and everything. But honestly, kids are going to get into stuff.
Yeah, they are.
And so as careful as we are, obviously we don't want our kids getting into stuff, but kids are curious, and so they get into that. As far as dealing with a person that is if it wasn't actually like a narcotic type pill that had the potential, obviously it had the potential of killing the baby. We deal with the aspect of the addict, but it's not just the pill, it's the whole lifestyle that the mother is in. It goes deeper than just, hey, she left out a pill. It goes in like, hey, there's some problems going on in the family or in the household that are creating a dangerous environment for the child. So I don't see that any different than a child that's in a home where there's spousal abuse.
Totally.
I don't see that any different as in a home where, well, I'm going to get real here, a home where the parents are there, but they're not there because they're either always on their phones or disconnected from their kids in another way. That's actually as damaging and actually has farther reaching effects than even like sexual abuse. And people don't understand that abandonment as a form of of childhood trauma has the farthest reaching effects of any other form of abuse that a kid can go through. And so we think the violent crimes, we think all these horrific things that happen to kids are the things that damage them for life. And it's actually not. It's actually the sustained, long disconnectedness of family or nurturing or love or care that actually does the farthest reaching damages to a child's life.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I just bring it back to kids are kids, and the mother that had a pill laying out is no different than a mother who left cleaning solution out. I mean, it's just we're humans, we make mistakes, and I would care more about the home environment.
I think that's the key. And that's why we put these articles out. Mm-hmm. I think Zach and I haven't really spent a whole lot of time actually just analyzing specifically the articles, but usually having an article in the news, it's something that's relevant, something that's like kind of right there and new. And then we can have a really cool conversation. And I love that you brought up it's larger than that. It's like the whole environment. And so I'm going to make a confession on here, because this brings me back, dude. I had, when Allie and Peyton, they're my two oldest daughters, I had them for a parenting weekend or week or something, and they were like 2 and 3, like very little. And I had an apartment, and I had, the night before I'd put them to bed, and then I drank a ton, and then I like woke up, late with the hangover. But I woke up off the couch to them in the kitchen with everything that was underneath the sink. Everything was dumped out, everything. And I like hopped up, and I was like, my heart was beating, and I was so thankful that my kids are like sitting there playing in it and they're alive, right? And then I like got super mad, but I was mad at me, and I like tried to cover that up forever. Like I'm like, nobody knew about it. And so I'm like, that happened, dude. But it's a result of the lifestyle. And so now I think people in recovery will have moments like that. Like that could have been a catalyst for me in recovery, but it's not, because the adage goes in at least AA is that it's cunning, baffling, and powerful is what they'll say. I think we're beyond that. I think we know a lot more about alcohol now to just dumb it down to cunning, baffling, and powerful. But there's still a truth to that, because to the active alcoholic, the person who's not in recovery, it is something they don't understand and they can't stop doing it. And so that's just what I wanted to share on that. I mean, that is like, and it's mind blowing, because if everybody knew that about me, even then they'd be like, why don't you just get your stuff together, right? And just to your point, you don't understand, man. I mean, if that's not going to change me, it has to be a higher power or something.
Yeah. And that goes right into the topic of like, I love that Jeremy brought up the home environment, because of course the news is going to in a way twist it to point fingers at someone. Mm-hmm. And thank God for the officer, and yes, thank God for the officer, but like, there's all these finger pointing, it seems, usually with media, that's how it is. But like, I remember a few years ago, there was a lady that accidentally left her kid in the car here in our town, and the kid, I don't think the kid made it.
No, she passed away.
She passed away. And the thing I remember the most about that, and this is the awful part, is how awful everyone treated the mom. Mm-hmm. And like, they're actually going to put her in jail. Or did they put her in jail?
Well, it went to trial, and they ended up, this mother was heartbroken. Yeah. And so she had ended up, I don't remember if she had to actually do jail time, but she was convicted of child neglect or child endangerment. But, go ahead and finish.
Yeah, it's just like, it was an innocent thing. Like, she didn't do it on purpose. She's like, I'm going to lock my kid in the car. Or it's like, I'm not going to leave a pill out for my kid. Maybe she was, just like we were saying, maybe she was in the middle of using as well, but we don't know the pill exactly.
No,
either.
she actually was a nurse.
She was.
She was actually a nurse in a local doctor's office. And I actually, if you don't mind, I actually wanted to talk about this after you shared, because let's come back to what's happening in society, because I'm the pastor that's not going to put a level of hierarchy of addiction with an absentee parent. I'm not going to do it, because it has the same result. And so we're living in the information age. We're busier than we ever have been. We're more fragmented in our thinking than we ever have been. We're more connected to our phones than we are. And this is not, I mean, I understand phones are a good tool and it's doing a lot of good stuff. The internet is an amazing tool. It's doing a lot of good stuff, but it's also creating an environment where people are losing their ability to be focused. They're losing their ability to be relational. They're losing their ability to even have sanity, because we're connected to such a digital world that this is. I feel this sometimes where you even go to say something and it's like I can't even pull it out of me because my brain is firing on so many levels that I feel like I'm going crazy. Or I get up to go get something and I forget what it was that I was going to get. I mean, these are things that happen. Yeah, no, it's everybody. And it's happening more and more the more disconnected we become with reality because of what's going on in the digital world. And so we have to understand and be on guard that this is happening relationally. This is not just affecting parents and kids. Let's take it. This is affecting marriages. This is affecting people's work ethic and jobs and business. I mean, it's having an effect on every aspect of especially our society, in how we are so fragmented, that these things are happening.
Yeah, I'm at that place where I got electronics early enough in school. Like, you guys remember Zach won't remember it, right? But you remember the Oregon Trail? Like in Frogger and stuff like that. Okay. And then in high school is really when high school was like in 1998. So having access to Windows 10 now, I can't remember but there was an equivalent, right, to that.
98 or something.
98. Yeah. I remember dial-up internet, man. You remember dial-up?
I remember when there was no internet and you played Oregon Trail on a disc that you put in the computer. That's what I remember.
I have enough that I'm able to operate computers, and I'm not probably as savvy as someone like Zach because he was like born into the stuff. But now my kids right now, dude, my kids are like blowing me out of the water on like games and stuff, and like especially Melody. And I'm kind of concerned. And I'm not. I mean, I have to steward my children in this digital era, right? But it is kind of cool to see them interact. I try to at least. I'm probably sure I'm guilty to some degree on all the electronic stuff, but I also try to engage with them in that digital world with them. So there's like these online games that we can play together. So we'll be in the living room playing in a game together online as a whole family, and everybody has their own device. So all 5 of us like have played games and stuff, and it's kind of fun. But yes, we're starting to go down a road that I don't see there's any. We're going down this road, right? Mm-hmm. There's no moving away.
We're there. Yeah,
we're there. And so it's to the point where you can't. You really have to become like Amish to avoid this thing, and I don't think that God's
the way Haley and I do it, having a 2-year-old that loves watching VeggieTales and loves playing on our phones and playing video games if she gets a chance to on our phones or something. It's just we set boundaries, and it has to start at a really young age. So Eleanor has a limit of 2 shows a day. Whenever she wants to watch them, that's all she gets. She doesn't actually get to play on our phones. It's just like, let's say we're in the middle of a big message or something here at church, and we forgot her toys. It'd be like, okay, you can play this little game on our phone. But otherwise, we try to have everything be physical for her, and starting growing up that way, because I know so many parents where it's like, guess who's the babysitter? The TV is,
Yeah.
And that's where the big, huge first disconnection comes, of thinking that, well, the TV has to be on all the time, or there has to be a device on all the time, everywhere. We can't just sit together as a family. And there's nothing against playing a game on the phone. There's nothing against watching TV. It's not bad stuff. It's not going to hurt anybody unless, you're actually watching something awful. But, but it's like, we got to be able to be responsible, because we've switched it from being a tool to people are just dependent on it for everything. Yeah. And it's so accessible. It's not like a board game. It's with you all the time, and it's so easy just to pull it up. A board game or a card game, you have to set it up, and there's intentionality to it, like a tangible intentionality. But with it's really easy for people to get sucked into, obviously people have forever now, video games and stuff like that, because it's so accessible. And there's so many different types. And it's just, and they're not bad, but it's that becomes our coping mechanism. Now we're dealing with a whole new generation of people.
Everything in moderation.
Yeah, that's what I did. I went to college, went to work, and then coached tennis professionally, and then played video games for 8 hours at night and worked off 3 hours of sleep. And because the video game was my outlet, and that's the only way I had connection to my friends, because they were on video games. And so in trying to juggle that, life's just a mess. You know, obviously there's more to it than just the video games, but it's like, I had to do it. Like that was like my, you know.
And in your defense and in my defense, they don't design these games for you to be able to just play once a week, dude.
No.
They design them to get you to have to play this thing for like 8 hours a day to be anything in the game. So you either have to like I don't know, but that they purposefully design these things to like consume you. So unfortunately, that's just kind of the way it is. We have probably about 13 minutes left, and I want to use that for our last segment, which is the fun, random thing. I think people are going to think that we don't do it. Because the topics are so on spot.
They are.
It's like, no,
Totally
those guys didn't. So I'm just going to thumb this thing, and we're going to find May 14th. So this is the daily reflection for May 14th. Today is not May 14th. It says, "It's okay to be me." And I will read the lower portion. It says, "Humility sounds so much like humiliation, but it really is the ability to look at myself, to be honest, accept what I find. I no longer need to be the smartest or dumbest or any other est. Finally, it is okay to be me. It is easier for me to accept myself if I share my whole life. If I cannot share in meetings, then I had better have a sponsor, someone with whom I can share those certain facts that could lead me back to a drunk to death. I need to take all the steps. I need the fifth step to learn true humility. Easier methods do not work." I really like that first portion though. It says, humility sounds so much like humiliation, but in reality, it is the ability to look at myself honestly and accept what I find. So normally we do a segment 4, but with time, this is going to be our segment 4.
Yeah.
That's kind of like your guys' thing. And so with Jeremy being our guest, I want to turn it over to you to, out of what we read here, what comes to mind?
A lot.
Yeah. So open it up. It's your discussion.
So really step 5 is all about being willing to confess.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, people can get stuck here, because what the enemy does is he brings us to such a place of condemnation and shame. Shame is such a nasty weapon of the enemy to keep us locked down in self-protection mode. This is where we sneak and we hide and we get defensive and we defend. Sometimes we'll even defend our bad behaviors. We feel justified because of things that we've been through, things that we've done, or we've experienced that have led us into negative coping mechanisms or behaviors. And so what I heard in that was humility is one of those things that people have a hard time having a right understanding of it. Humility is not about being squashed. Humility is not about looking down on yourself. It's not shaming yourself. Humility is where I'm becoming vulnerable and transparent, and I'm willing to open up, and I don't have to hide. I don't have to hide behind shame. I don't have to hide behind condemnation. I don't have to hide behind the facade that I've got it all together. I can be honest and open about my struggles. And honestly, if the body of Christ, because I'm a pastor, I'm going to talk from that perspective, because this is where the church, I believe, has done a really terrible job of helping people be honest, helping people be transparent.
Yeah.
The church has put on their suits and ties, and they show up all dressed up on Sunday mornings and put out this facade that we've got it all together. And honestly, we don't. And all you have to do is look at the fruit of the church.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be love in the world. We're supposed to be the most attractive thing in the universe. And you can, it's very apparent that that's not the case. So let's come back to the reason that's not that is because people can't be real. The church, by and large, the church doesn't know how to deal with pain. They don't know how to deal with addiction. They don't know how to deal with people's bad behaviors. They don't know. They just think everybody should just shape up, clean up, and behave. And they're always pointing the finger at other people who are doing worse than them to help themselves feel better. I'm just calling it. I'm just calling it out because this has been a disease that's been especially in the church, for a long time. And again, I'm going to plug this. That's why at Faith Foundry, like, recovery is huge. We say that if you're not in recovery, you're in denial. Or that if you don't need recovery, you're in denial, because we're all recovering from something. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And he's not, there's nothing different about a person. I mean, the enemy's going to come in against any person, and he's going to come in some way. You may not have been molested. You may not have been abused. You may not have been raised in an addiction home, but there's been ways that the enemy has come in to mess with you. And he typically starts when we're children. So we have to deal with those core issues. All of our negative behaviors are rooted actually in emotional trauma and childhood trauma, all of them. And most people think that, well, I survived my trauma. Like, what happened to me as a kid doesn't have any effect on who I am today. That's a gigantic fallacy. That's a lie. We are a product of our environment. We're a product of what we've been taught, of the things that have been said to us. And the things that we've experienced. We're a product of that. And so the work of God and the work of the Holy Spirit, and it's supposed to be the work of the church, is to be able to help people walk through those things that have been those core issues and core pains that result in negative behaviors. But instead, the church just points the finger and says, well, that's a negative behavior, and you need to stop that. And so it's not safe for people to get humble. It's not safe for people to get real. And until, I say this all the time, any secrets, any things that are left in darkness are given power to the enemy. The enemy has the ability to continue to condemn you and accuse you and to shame you in those areas because they're not brought into the light. They're not brought into the light of forgiveness. They're not brought into the light of Jesus Christ and all that he did to set us free from our past. And so, without going on a whole, like preaching a whole sermon on this, that this is the core of every addiction, of every coping mechanism. Is it's not safe for me to be real about the things that I'm struggling with, or about the statement in that said for me to be real about who I am and what I've been through. And the fifth step comes after the fourth step, where you did a fearless moral inventory of your life, where you're looking at the good and the bad, and you're saying, so many times we focus on the bad because we're just bent in that negative. So it's important, if you're doing your fourth step, start with the positive. Start with your identity in Christ. Start with about who he says you are, so that you're not swallowed up by shame and guilt from the enemy. That's just a plug for anybody doing their fourth step.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
So the fifth step then is we confess. We bring those things into the light. It's not good enough to just write it on a piece of paper. We have to be able to come into a relational place where that can be exposed relationally in a safe environment. This is what the church is supposed to be. We're supposed to be the safest, most loving, caring environment. And typically we've been the most judgmental, the most finger pointing, the most unsafe place for someone to be real about their pain.
I think about this a little bit. I think there's even been churches that started off that way, like, hey, we want to escape this, but it just still comes back. And so everybody still falls into this place where, okay, I was broken, now I'm fixed, and now they're broken, and now condemn them. It's like it fundamentally has to change. Something fundamentally about the church has to change, because it has to. The church can't be centered around an insecure pastor. And I don't mean to say that to be me. I'm just saying Jesus wasn't insecure, and if churches are going to be centered around one guy that has all the answers, then that's going to fall apart. But it's all going to be just trying to keep putting more layers of onion on this thing to try to hold it together. But the reality is that when everyone can confess and just admit, even the pastors, right? Wouldn't it be great if the pastors could confess their sin and not lose their job?
Right? Yeah.
Anyway, Zach, you got... we're just totally shafting Zach.
That's what happens when you put a pastor on the channel.
This is a special episode. I'm back. It's excuse week too, because I had a baby and I'm totally unprepared, but we're going to do this podcast anyway. It's awesome. And then we just totally shafted Zach at it.
No, it's good, because I feel like Jeremy brings up all the points that I'm like, man, this is so good. The only one I had left was to kind of bring that step, humility, around to parenting, is that I've seen such good examples with actually both you guys with how humility works in parenting. Because I was growing up, at least in my home, you don't really admit anything. You don't talk about anything. We don't talk about bad stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so if mom or dad reacts bad, there's like, you know, never really an apology afterwards or a coming, you know, to and a sit down. It's always, you know, if there's a sit down, it's something bad that, you know, I did. And so that's huge to step into, to knowing and seeing like, oh my gosh, I get to be humble to my kids. Like if I mess up or something, or if I'm wrong, I get to admit to Eleanor or any of my kids, like, hey, you know, I messed up, you know, and then they get to see that and they get to walk out of the fruit of knowing that, hey, humility and being open and honest always bears better fruit than lying, you know, cheating and stealing and just trying to hide the truth. And so that's a huge part.
That's a huge part.
I think the answer really is, and this is not really necessarily recovery related, but I think the answer to the church is just building a new culture. And I think it's going to just we're just going to have generations die off and have new generations come up, you know, just now, obviously people can change, but I think that the real bulk of the movement is going to change when it just changes. Right. So, I mean, I know there's some context in the Old Testament where a whole generation had to die off before they could get into the promised land. Isn't that true?
Yeah, there was the ones that came out at a certain age that because they held on to slave mentality.
Yeah, exactly.
And they wanted to go back to Egypt instead
the
of
concept.
Taking on the challenge to enter into the promised land, even though it carried the promise of that they would get it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, as consequence to them not obeying God, they weren't able to enter in. And really that's just, they didn't trust God and they didn't believe that they could actually take the promised land. And if you want to just put that into, instead of a Bible story, into like real life stuff, you know, if we have the thinking that either we don't trust God or we're not going to be responding to his promises or we're not being willing to even be humble. Let's just go back to humility. If I can't trust God enough to be vulnerable because I'm worried about how I'm going to be judged or what somebody else is going to say, then we're not going to get to experience the promised land of freedom that God has for us.
And that's right. And that brings us right to the end. Thank you, Jeremy, for that. That was awesome. If you guys aren't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. We would love to bring you into the community. We have lots of content. This is just the beginning for Position Recovery. There's so many more things we want to do, but if you want to give, you can go to patreon.com/positioned and you can help support us. But anyway, guys, this is the end part where we go, many are called, but you are Zach, how'd you miss that?
I thought you were just telling us what we were going to say and then we were going to do
all right, guys,
do it again.
We will see you next time. All right. Many are called,
and
but you are
positioned.